Well, this certainly seems familiar. Nintendo is hunting for things that they can release to the disc rewriter kiosk, and they've gone all the way back to the very beginning. The Famicom itself was designed to play a good version of Donkey Kong, and everything after that was gravy. Something that'll be obvious to you is the lack of a cover for this game, and that's because this is the point where Nintendo has basically stopped releasing those for games that they put out on the disc rewriter. Previously, you'd pay your 500 yen, pick the game you wanted to write to the floppy, and a few minutes later it would spit out the disc and a label for it. Then, if you wanted to, you could go up to the register at that store and give them another 100 yen for the instruction manual and covers. Well, I guess most people weren't paying the extra fee for the covers, because we're going to see plenty of games that don't have them from this point on. They do have instruction manuals that were just big, fold-out, black and white sheets of paper. Yeah, they were really doing things on the cheap with this. Donkey Kong was the arcade game that put Nintendo on the map. They had other games before it. They had consoles before it. But before Donkey Kong, in terms of arcade games, Nintendo was just one more company making very similar games to everyone else. As successful as the Color TV game series and the Game & Watch line were, it's really Donkey Kong and the development of the platformer that turned Nintendo into the company that's still relevant today. The Famicom version of Donkey Kong had to scale the game down quite a bit. Those ROM chips weren't cheap in 1983, and they didn't have the vertical resolution they needed. So they dropped the cutscene that told the story, switched down the vertical space in stages, and got rid of one stage entirely. When it came time to release Donkey Kong for the Famicom Disk System, Nintendo didn't change a thing. This really is a low-effort, let's see if we can squeeze a few more yen out of this kind of situation. They weren't going to make a whole new port and then sell it for 500 yen. Whole new ports of some of those early games will come a little bit later. From the title screen, you're offered two game modes, A and B, as well as an option for 2 players, though 2 players here just means you alternate who's playing. The difference between Game Mode A and Game Mode B is that Game Mode B starts you 1 lap of the levels in. There are 3 stages in Donkey Kong, and after you complete the 3rd one, it goes right back to the beginning again, because this is one of those arcade games where it's really about how high of a score you can get. While you're playing, the A button jumps and the B button doesn't do anything. It's not like this Jumpman character can shoot fireballs or anything. Okay, he's not Jumpman at this point, he is definitely Mario. The plot of the game is that Mario's girlfriend Lady has been kidnapped by a giant ape, and the ape is climbing to the top of a construction site. As a skilled carpenter, Mario is very capable of navigating the narrow steel beams, as well as dealing with large gorillas. And yes, in this case, it's still Lady in 1988. It'll be a few more years before she's Pauline. In the first 2 stages, your only goal is to get to the top. After you stand next to Lady, the game advances to the next stage. They couldn't get the between stage cutscene in, where Donkey Kong grabs her and climbs up the ladder. On the 3rd stage, your goal is to remove all of the rivets, which you do by walking over them. Once all 8 are gone, then Donkey Kong falls, Lady is rescued, and it's time to do it again. On the first stage, you have to deal with barrels rolling down inclines. The barrels could go off the end of the slope and drop down to the next level, or they could fall down a ladder. Generally, this occurs at random. However, if you position Mario at the top of a ladder, a barrel won't roll down it. On later stages, you'll have to do that and wait for a gap. The first barrel that Donkey Kong throws goes right to the bottom and becomes a fireball. That fireball will randomly walk around at the bottom of the screen, and while it can climb up to the 2nd tier, it can't go any higher than that. Jumping up and grabbing the hammers will let Mario carry those around, smashing any barrels that come close to him. He'll even smash the fire if you do it on the 3rd stage, though on the 1st the fire never gets close enough to you to let you do it. Smashing things is worth a lot more points than jumping over them, so if you're going for a high score, you'll definitely want to grab it, and then sit there for a moment, smashing anything that comes. Stage 2 has these elevators and little platforms that you hop between. I always found Stage 2 to be the most boring stage in Donkey Kong. There are some of Lady's items that you can get for extra points, and if you want to be really aggressive with your jumps, it's possible to take some shortcuts, but there isn't much of action on this level. The fires are easy to avoid. So is the timing on the popping beams that Donkey Kong throws. The biggest challenge with them is that they vary their pattern just enough that unless you're cautious, you could get caught when you're climbing that last ladder. This is the stage that demonstrates the platforming aspects of Mario the best, since you're jumping between platforms. Like most early platformers, Mario can't really fall a huge distance. If it's more than a little step down, then the fall will be fatal to him. Donkey Kong's third stage is all fire all the time, and fire moves just squirrely enough that you probably don't want to try jumping over it unless you have to. Fortunately, there's plenty of escape paths, and after you pass over a rivet and knock it out, fire can't cross that hole. There's more bonus items to collect here, as well as hammers to smash the flames with. But really the important thing are those 8 rivets, and to not stop when you're walking on top of them. Obviously, Donkey Kong is as much a beloved classic in Japan as it is here. And this port of Donkey Kong is really well liked. Okay, maybe not specifically the Famicom Disk System port, but Nintendo's 8-bit port of Donkey Kong. My take is, why are you looking at Donkey Kong on the Disk System when you could just get the cartridge? I mean, if you wanted every single piece of Donkey Kong media out there, yeah, get it. But Donkey Kong cartridges are common. It was a bestseller for Nintendo. And Disk System copies are a lot harder to find, especially ones that have the instruction sheet. Absolutely play Donkey Kong. Just use the more easily available version.